Hi everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am doing a writing and makeup tag. I am starting a writing and makeup tag. I had so much fun with the books and writing tag, and I thought, this would be awesome if you did it, but talking about writing while doing your makeup. So that is exactly what I am going to do. I'm going to pop all the steps and questions down below so you can jump in and do this tag yourself. If you are a writer and you want to do your makeup and talk about writing, please join me. But without further ado, I'm gonna jump right into it because what a rough face, and I really would like to put some makeup on top of it. So the first step is primer, and I'm going to be using the Fenty Pro Filter Primer, just like in my books and writing video. And if you want to see more kind of in-depth about some of the products I'm using, I recommend watching that one. I blather on a bit more about the makeup in that one, and I will link down below to that. So that way I can talk more about writing here, though I am doing a very different eyeshadow look. So if you're here for the eyeshadow look, stay tuned. So, primer. And the question is, what's your brainstorming process and or your favorite brainstorming tip? So my favorite brainstorming tip I'm gonna do so that I don't talk about process for 80 million years is I like to come up with a history for my characters, specifically and especially my main character and my love interest. I like to think about their parents. I mean, really, I tend to think about everyone's parents. Sometimes I go as far back as grandparents, but for me, thinking about where a character has come from does a lot of really good work to help me figure out what they want, what kind of person they are, and where they're going. I mean, think about us in real life, who our parents are and who our grandparents were before that, and so on and so on. You can go even further back in familial history. Really dictates, kind of who we are as people. It guides us more than we sometimes realize. And speaking of realizing things, I forgot to zoom the camera further into my face just like last time, so I'm gonna do that right now so that from now on you can see some of the more, in-depth makeup that I'm doing. The next step is foundation, and the question is, are you a gardener or an architect? I.e., do you outline or not? I.e., plotter or pantser? And like last time, I'm going to be using the Fenty Pro Filter Foundation in shade 110, applying that with a beauty blender. So if you've watched any of my videos before, you know I am a die-hard pantser, which would be the gardener. So gardener architect is George R.R. Martin's terminology. I do really like it. I think it sounds nice and organic either way. So I do not outline. I do kind of know where things start and kind of definitely the inciting incident. You tend to know the midpoint turn, and then I make it up from there. So that would be gardening, i.e. I plant the seeds of where I need to go, and I kind of, tend to the garden from there. I really enjoy pantsing. I find it to be a really energizing process because I'm essentially telling myself the story as I go, and it gives me a lot of freedom to make changes. Now, typically, my midpoint turn doesn't really change, although sometimes the reason for it will change, so the reason for my big plot twist might change and shift. And same thing with my resolution. Like, the things that bring my character to their resolution and complete their arc might change along the way, and to me, that's really exciting. The next step is concealer, and the question is revision. Do you love it or do you hate it? And what is your revision process like generally? I am using my Urban Decay Naked Skin, so I've got green to correct some red coloring, and I've got my regular concealer for everything else. So I love revision. I adore it. I'm not the biggest fan of drafting and first drafts, though I'm learning to love it a bit more because I love fixing things. So I like having a finished product, finished so to speak, and feeling like I did the thing. It's always a lot of words. Writing is always really overwhelming, but what I like about revision is it's not scary to throw out a chapter or two and rewrite them because I have 80,000 other words or 90,000 other words. And so for me, revision is problem solving, and I really, really enjoy that. Now, I have a whole video on my revision process, and I will link to that down below. But kind of in a nutshell, I tend I really actually favor both types of revision. One I call a linear revision, which is where I start at the beginning and I work my way chapter by chapter through the book to fix lots of different issues. I've definitely done that before. I'm also a non-linear reviser, which is when I know that I have like 8 problems and I might jump around the book out of order in order to work on them. I've done both and I like both, and it completely depends on the book. The book always dictates the revision method. Just want to jump in and say that when I have a very, tricky blemish, which I have right now, it doesn't want to be covered by my Urban Decay, I go in with MAC. This is the NC15 Studio Finish Concealer, so it's in the little pot. This one is my go-to holy grail for covering spots that are really tricky, especially the reddish ones, so just FYI. Okay, so the next step is powder, and the question is endings. Do you write chronologically or do you jump around? Some people start at the end, so do you start at the end? And do you know your ending when you start? And do you prefer happy endings or bittersweet? And I'm using my Bare Minerals Matte Foundation Powder, applying it with a mineral foundation brush from Sephora. So I 100% write chronologically. This is part of pantsing for me. I have to go in order because pantsing for me is following an emotional arc. So if I don't go in order, I can't kind of track the emotional arcs from scene to scene, and I can't figure out where I'm going. So I write chronologically, and I tend to know the emotional ending of the book. Even if I don't know exactly what, the closing scene or image is, I know where my character needs to end up. And because I write romance, my endings are always happy. As a reader, I actually do enjoy bittersweet endings, but I haven't written one as of yet because all of my stories end happily. The next step is eyebrows, and the question is titles. Do you come up with them before you start, during, or after? And is titling your work while you're writing it important to you or not really? I'm using my BH Cosmetics HD brow pencil to kind of fill stuff in, and then I'm using my Benefit Gimme Brow to kind of put everything in place. So my answer to this question is yes and no. Titles are actually pretty important to me. I do need to call my story something while I'm drafting. Untitled just isn't gonna work for me, or TBD. So I give them kind of working project names. Every once in a while, the working project name does end up sticking. And typically, before I'm done with the book, I need to come up with a title that I'm really happy with, or I do kind of twitch a little about it. So that means, yes, titling my work is important to me, but in the case of both of my books that are being published, my working title definitely is not the title that is ending up being published. Brightly Burning, the title was changed after I sold it, and the work in progress, the current one, Space Angst, Persuasion in Space, which I just revealed, and you'll hear the title of that this summer. The working title for 80-90% of my draft was completely different from what the title's gonna be. So that's kind of how that ended up being. The next step is eyeshadow, and before I get into the question, I do want to say I'm using eyeshadow primer. I skipped that last time, but I'm going to be out all day today, so I want my eyeshadow to stay on my eyes, and I'm using the Too Faced Shadow Insurance. Alright, eyeshadow, my favorite part, and the question is, some people go monochromatic and some people blend. Do you love big or small casts? And what is your favorite character development hack? So I'm going to be using the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette for this one. I'm gonna show you this. This is my new kind of go-to basic palette, and it looks like this. I love it. It's just got a lot of kind of pinks and peaches and some purples over here. And I just find that it creates a really nice look. I mentioned last time with Storybook Cosmetics that half the time when you guys said you really liked my makeup, it was from that palette. The other half is the Sweet Peach palette. Okay, first I am blending the color Georgia, which is a very soft pink, into my crease. So if you have this palette, you can follow along. So let's talk about casts of characters. I have a problem with character soup. I love big casts of characters. And so very often when I'm drafting, I come up with a ton of different characters to do a ton of different things. And the first thing I have to do in revision is start condensing. So I will combine the characters, kind of look at the the function that the characters are performing in the story, and I'll find places to consolidate. That said, compared to some books, there's always going to be a ton of characters in my books because I love big and interesting casts, so I'm always going to have a lot of different characters and a lot of different character dynamics going on. Next, I'm taking a bit of Just Peachy, which is another like deeper pink shade in this palette, and I'm also going to kind of blend it into the outer part of my crease. And I just realized that the brainstorming tip that I gave you guys for the primer question is really also my best character development hack. And thus I feel like I kind of cheated you out of a good brainstorming tip. So to make up for my oversight, instead of a character development hack, which is really the brainstorming tip I gave you, I will give you a brainstorming tip. And this can help you with character. So my tip is to watch exquisitely structured, plotted movies with great and deep characters. Watch a bunch of them. I find that watching all kinds of different stories or ingesting all kinds of different stories, you know, whether it's reading those stories or watching them, can be really, really helpful for brainstorming and character development hack. Because you start to see how, in especially tightly plotted movies, how scenes expertly serve both character and plot, which inevitably is a great character hack. Because you really need to make sure that each scene serves not just the character, but also the plot, and that they move the character from point A to point B. No character should be static, they should develop throughout your story and at every part of your story. Next, I'm taking the shade Peach Pit, which is a very kind of, it's like a peach pit. It's very kind of plummy, and I'm putting it into the outer V. Next, I am taking what is my favorite shade in this palette, and honestly a shade that I think is worth purchasing the palette for. It is called Bellini. It's this gorgeous pinky peach color. And I'm putting that kind of from the center, you know, the inner corner of my lid into the center, and I'm blending it into everything else. Then I'm just taking Delectable, which is a much deeper purple, to deepen the shade in my outer crease. Lastly, just to add a little bit more gold into the center of my lid, I'm going to use this Becca eyeshadow palette. That's going to cause some nice reflection on the camera. This was a winter exclusive, and it's just like a bunch of, all the reflection, like kind of shimmery, like gold, bronze, pink colors, so it's really good for kind of like popping a little bit of shine onto the center of the lid. Okay, the next step is eyeliner, the hardest step. And so the question is, what is the hardest thing, or what are the hardest things for you to write? I'm not gonna talk and do my eyeliner at the same time because I'm not sure if I can do it. So I'm gonna apply my eyeliner and then I'm gonna tell you my writing thing. Alright, I've got the cursive. One side is a bit wonky and doesn't really match the other, but we're just gonna go with it. And this is why we're talking about what is really hard for you to write that maybe you don't always get right. So for me, I'm gonna go with action scenes. I find kind of action scenes a bit tougher because I really have to kind of visualize beat for beat exactly what happens, and action just isn't kind of my automatic mode. I'd much rather talk about feelings. And also I often default to weight room syndrome. I have a video on that. I can link to that below as well. And action scenes really both play into weight room syndrome and also force me to break out of it. They play into it because it's really easy just to write a play-by-play. You know, she, you know, describing action. She ran, she turned, oh, this is all really bad writing. But it's really easy to write just exactly what someone is doing and not think about the environment, what's actually outside of the character. But also, because of that, I have to fight a lot harder to establish a sense of place and make sure that my action scenes aren't kind of a boring blur. The next step is mascara, and the question is, do you write long or short, and what is your typical first draft word count? And I'm using Benefit, they're real. So I draft long, definitely. Even when I don't want to draft long, I draft long. Because I write chronologically and with the pantsing, I really can't skip anything. I have to kind of fully develop the emotional arcs and character arcs, especially to get through my draft. I always aim for a 70K draft because I write science fiction and fantasy, and my drafts always clock in at least 90,000 words. So my last two drafts clocked in over 100K, but with this one, Persuasion in Space, I'm really trying not to do that. So to give you some context, so Brightly Burning, my draft was 104,000 words. I cut it to 99,000 words, 99,700 words or 800 words for querying, and then it's being published at about 94,500 words, and that's about 400 pages. The next step is contour. And the question is, tell us the dark parts of your book. Who is your villain or your antagonist? What dark, creepy, tough things do your characters face? Like last time, I'm using my little Smashbox contour palette that I got from Sephora, and my disclaimer is that I'm not great at this. So it's really hard to talk about the dark parts of my whip without spoilers, so I'm going to talk about Brightly Burning. So the antagonist is a bit abstract in Brightly Burning, in the sense that for much of the book, something is going on. Someone keeps trying to kill Hugo, who is the captain of the Rochester. And so there is an antagonist, but you don't know who it is, what it is, where they are, or why they're doing what they're doing. Layered on top of that are additional antagonists for Stella, or maybe they're the same antagonist and that's part of the mystery. So individuals on board who are a bit gruff with her or weird, and they create conflict and get in her way. That includes Hinata, who is the medical officer who has a bet pool running on when she's going to, give up and leave, and also Bianca Ingram, who is her romantic rival. Hugo brings Bianca and her family on board, and Bianca is rich and gorgeous and courting Hugo. Really, my motto is that any really good book does have multiple antagonists and multiple types of antagonists to create conflict and also keep the readers on their toes. So on top of this, I also have a broader antagonist outside, and this is where the book gets very dark. Resources in the fleet are dwindling, and honestly, there's not enough for everyone, and people are gonna die, y'all. Like, there's definitely some darkness in terms of tough choices that have to be made and risks that have to be taken. Can they go down to Earth, or will they freeze to death? So it kind of has this like dark and creepy undertone because of the mystery and because I was inspired by Gothics, but I wouldn't call it a dark book. The next step is blush, and the question is, who are you most scared to share your work with? Or embarrassed, scared or embarrassed. And I'm using my Tarte blush in the shade Partey again, looks like this. I am most scared to share my work with my mom. So my mom has always been like my greatest cheerleader, and not my toughest critic. It's not even like I think she's going to be critical. She won't. I just really want to make her proud. And she hasn't read any of my fiction in, since I was probably in high school. I've really closely guarded it. Multiple books. I've never let my mom read one of my books. And so she has an arc of Brightly Burning, and she's finally going to read it. I wouldn't give it to her until there was like a copy edited version. I wanted my best self in front of my mom. So that is who I am most nervous to have read my stuff, because I want her to like it. I hope she likes it. I mean, she will like it, but like, what is she really gonna think, right? Is she gonna think I'm like a huge dork? That's me. The next step is highlighter, and the question is, what are your favorite scenes to write? And again, I'm gonna use my Makeup Forever highlighter. I think I figured out the shade, so I'm gonna link. I'm putting all of the makeup I'm using down below. I'm telling you what each of the products are. So my absolute favorite scenes to write are arguments. Arguments and conflict. I love conflict. I love giving my characters something juicy to react to, and then especially having them respond to it in terms of dialogue, because I just really like writing dialogue, and especially I love the kind of interplay, and especially an argument of people kind of going back and forth, and how you can kind of lead a scene up to just like a really delicious breaking point. I really enjoy that. And guess what? That's exactly the kind of scene I have to write today. So yay! Because arguments, I'll say, and scenes where I get to absolutely destroy my characters. Those are really fun. Is there something wrong with me? And last but not least is lipstick. And the question is, kissing scenes. How do you tackle them? Do you like them? I do not. So I find kissing scenes really challenging and awkward to write, because I think that kisses are slightly challenging and awkward, in the sense that maybe I shouldn't put on my lipstick. Oh, and I should tell you what I'm using. This is Smashbox Always On Liquid Lipstick in the shade Dream Huge. I think I find kissing scenes challenging to write for the same reason I find action scenes challenging to write, which is that they can be overly technical, meaning you have to kind of think about the logistics of where each person's body parts are, but it's a very limited range of body parts, and body parts that can just be very awkward to describe. So I find kissing scenes like really tough, especially because you want to make them feel swoony and swoopy and romantic, unless you don't. I'm the champion of awkward first kisses. And you want the readers to, well, you want it to be a little steamy and you want them to fan themselves, and that is really challenging to do. So how I tackle kissing scenes, I drink. I'm kidding. No, I make sure the buildup is really good. I think buildup to a kiss is really, really important. And then I don't overly focus on body parts because I think that's where you can it can get real weird. So I really think about feelings. I think about what the character is feeling and what might be going on in their head if it's close POV, which it usually is. And then that's kind of how I approach them and hopefully don't fail miserably. Oh, and I also think about everything else going on. So not just the kiss, but hands and touching and heat and stuff. So that's how I tackle them, and I find them really, really challenging. I'll do anything in my power to avoid writing them. Ta-da! There's the final look. This is kind of, my peachy purple pinky look that I like to do. It's the one that kind of matches my book cover. So that was it. That was the writing and makeup tag. I hope you enjoyed it. I gave you a couple little nuggets of writing advice. Let me know down below in the comments if you liked this. If you want to do this, please do the tag. I'm not going to tag anyone specific, though I am going to thank Kat Cho. She's got an awesome channel on here, and Kat helped me with a few of the questions. The one for eyeshadow was totally all Kat. I was totally stuck on what it was, and Kat helped me with that one. So definitely check out her channel. I will link to it below. And tagging, do it if you want to do it. And let me know down below if any of these little nuggets of writing that I talked about, if you want to hear more about them, maybe I should do a full video on one or more of these things. And of course, any of the ones I already did do a video on, I'm gonna link to that down below in the description. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I have a couple more tags in my brain that I might try doing. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. We're creating a nice little writing community here on my channel, writing and books. I talk about YA, both the industry, writing YA, and reading YA, like great books. And I post videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and as always, happy writing, happy reading, happy makeup. Sure, happy makeup.